If you have clicked on this podcast, you are one, a student, two, interested in entrepreneurship. Whenever, as a student, you think of doing something different like entrepreneurship, you have this spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you have people like Sarthak, my co host, a killer in academics, currently studying the topmost course in the topmost college of the country. On the other end of the spectrum, we have our guest. And trust me, he is a rare species. And I fall somewhere exactly at the middle of the spectrum. Kind of good at business, kind of good at academics. Slowly moving towards our guest side. And guess what? Sarthak, being the OG he is on one side, is also trying to move towards the guest side. We're all trying to move towards our guest side. Why, you may ask? Because the guest we have today is not your average 19-year-old. This man built an agency to $15,000 per month revenue while still in high school, while hiding it from his parents. Not only that, 5 months ago, he had to shut everything down. He went from the peak to the bottom. And you might think that that might have been the end of it. But this man chose not to accept defeat. Recently, he started another agency and got to $19,000 per month in 5 freaking days. Can you imagine that? He broke his revenue record and did it in record time. And he did this, and he did all of this while being in college, while dealing with family issues, and while making crazy brain rot jokes. Lads and ladies, I introduce to you the LinkedIn Lord, aka the Brain Rot Boy, aka Dylan Bond. Dylan, my man, how are you doing? Welcome to the podcast.
Doing amazing. Quite an introduction, man. Love the introduction. Yeah.
So I appreciate it, man. So I've given a quick intro about you, but I've left a few gaps on purpose. And in order to fill those gaps, I would have to ask you, what's your full story? Start wherever you want. All yours.
Yeah, no, for sure. So pretty much, so I started my agency journey way back, so a couple of years ago now. So I believe at the start of grade 11. And then so the first
Okay.
agency I tried was a lead gen agency. And I ran it for about 3 or 4 months. I was going pretty well, getting some decent results. It was a bit less competitive in that time, so it was a bit easier. Then eventually I decided, like I was watching a lot of Levi Irola's content, who's a really big name, like the lead gen space. Then I decided to join his community. It's called Agency Velocity, and it's basically a collection of other lead gen agency owners. It's kind of like a program you go through to scale your agency. And I decided, okay, well, this is going to be a solid investment for me. So I took all the money I made pretty much from like my 3 or 4 months of running my own agency, and I just put it in there, went all in. Went super, super well. Great community if you have the chance of getting in that. But yeah, I mean, it went awesome. So it was about 3 months in that community. I scaled, so I think it was like 9K MRR, so we're doing pretty decently well. However, I had some family issues at the back of that as well. So I was in high school at the time, and like I was like my grades were like fucking plummeting because I was running the agency at the same time, right? Super, super difficult stuff. But yeah, eventually my parents made me shut it down. I wasn't 18 yet, right? So I couldn't legally just move out. So yeah, they made me shut it down. So I was like forced to like, fire all my clients, close down the entire agency, just pretty much just stopped doing it, even though I was in the community at the time. But yeah, so I pretty much stopped. I think this was like May of grade 11. And then for the next, until like basically August, I was just chilling out, doing schoolwork, being a normal kid. And then, I always knew that eventually at the start of my grade 12 year, I would just like go restart, go all in on the agency again, because like I fucking loved it. I didn't want to leave behind, right? So eventually, over the next like 4 months, from like the end of the school year into summer, I just like, chilled out, did normal kid stuff, and then eventually I was like, okay, now it's time to restart the agency. Now I've got like all of my back end knowledge from the past. I've got some clients, a couple clients were coming back as well. I'm still in the community. I'm absolutely dialed in. So it was September. I remember it was like September 2nd. It was like the first Monday of September. I ran my first campaign. It did pretty okay. It did pretty decently well. It didn't do like substantially well. It just did okay. And I think the reason for that is because like in the 4 or 5 months that I wasn't running my agency, things became a lot more competitive in the space I was trying to get into. So then, eventually we were doing like less calls than we were before. We were getting our clients like slightly worse results. We still were getting them good results, but it wasn't like, stand out like at my last agency, right? So it was a bit difficult. And then so I was like, okay, you know what? Cold email isn't like working the best for me in terms of like getting lead deal flow. It's working pretty decently for my clients, but not for me. So I decided like, okay, what's another medium or another sales channel where I can start to get leads? And then that's when I kind of started posting on LinkedIn a little bit. So it's kind of like a shot in the dark, right? I didn't think it would work out. And then so my philosophy from the very beginning was to just post frameworks that would appeal to my ICP that were just backed by my own social proof, right? So that's the entire strategy, still the same one we use today. And so I started doing it. And then to my surprise, like in the first like week, I got a couple of inbounds. And I found that these inbounds were super, super warm, right? So they went and basically they saw my LinkedIn post. They were like, okay, this guy seems pretty credible. They like, went scroll along their feed. They saw a couple more of their posts. And then eventually like, they kind of hopped over the awareness threshold, be able to book a call with me. And then so a couple of them did, right? I posted like, I don't know, like 10 pieces of content at the time. So I got 2 inbound leads from that, just like guys who would see multiple of those posts and eventually were convinced to book a call with me. And so pretty much I signed both of them actually. So 100% closed for 2 of those, which is pretty cool. And so I just started to run like outbound for those guys because that was the service I was doing at the time, right? So pretty much, yeah, they both came in, started doing outbound for like the next couple of months into October. It's going all well and good. And then so eventually one of my clients, he was like, you know what, Dylan, we want to start posting on LinkedIn. We don't have the time to do it ourselves. We don't know how like the whole like game works. But however, I know that you have actually gotten some pretty decent results with LinkedIn. So I was wondering if you could offer us kind of an upsell service to do our LinkedIn content for us. And so basically my client kind of upsold himself. And I was like, you know what, why not? Right? It's some extra money on the side. So I remember it was my first LinkedIn retainer. It was a very small retainer. It was like $800 a month. And then so pretty much I started doing it with him. And we just like, we spent the first week like deciding what kind of content we were going to write. I started like writing my first batch of posts, right? And the week after that, we just started running content. And then what I found over the next months is that we actually got 2 times better results than our outbound campaigns just with the LinkedIn stuff. So then that's when I knew, okay, holy shit, right? I'm pretty good at this. Like it was clear to me as well because I've seen like a lot of other agencies talk about like how they wanted to do LinkedIn as well, but they just didn't have the time. So I was like, okay, so this is a service that's not yet saturated. I'm selling to a market that I know because I am myself that market, right? And then it's a service that only I really know how to deliver because at the time there wasn't many other people doing it and there still isn't. So I decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to go all in on this LinkedIn stuff. I like contacted my other clients, some of them were agencies as well. And I was like, okay, would you guys like to start doing LinkedIn? And then 2 of the 4 that I had at the time, they said yes. And then so I upsold them on the service. I upsold my original client on like the $800 a month retainer to like a $2,200 a month retainer. So and then eventually I started like posting about my wins in my agency Velocity, which is the community I was still in at the time. And I signed like 2 inbound leads just from there. And so that's how we hit our first like 15K month just off of that, right? But then eventually my grades started to slip again, right? And then so I was forced, and then my parents found out there's this whole like family drama thing. And then I was like, okay. And they forced me to shut down my agency yet again. Absolutely pissed me the fuck off. But of course, like I had to comply at the time because it was 2 months before I turned 18, which sucked. But but that's what I did. So I had to shut it all down. I had to fire my clients. It was very, shitty time in my life, but it was happening again, which was really horrible for me. But anyway, we got through it, right? So pretty much shut down the agency, fired all the clients, and then I was like, okay, now I'm just gotta chill out for the next 6 months until summer hits. Then I go to university, and then maybe I'll do 3 times a charm. I'll try it again. And then so pretty much, that's what I did. Next 6 months, pretty much zilch, did nothing of like notability at all. I just kind of sat down to my schoolwork, stayed at home. Went out with friends, did some stupid shit, that kind of stuff. And then pretty much it was August. I remember it was August. So it's like week 2 of August. So right in the middle of August, started prepping up the new agency. And I was like, okay, I know I'm going to restart LinkedIn stuff. Then I contacted a lot of my clients from my last agency. And I was like, hey, would you guys like to start like running this LinkedIn content thing again? I know you get great results this time. I know I'll be like a reliable service delivery this time, right? Because I was planning on moving out by the time that I like hit like 10K, right? And then so they were all like, okay, yeah, let's try this again. We're going to re-sign back onto you, right? We're going to come back from your old agency, come to your new one. We're going to start running the exact same service. And then so basically I took 87%, I think it's like 80 something percent of my clients from my last agency. They all carried over to my next one. And then so basically September, I had like 4 clients like automatically just from the last agency. And then pretty much when I made the announcement post on my LinkedIn that I was restarting my agency, I actually had 2 more leads come in, and so those closed within the next like couple days. Even we had a very quick sales cycle with them, and then I closed another one just through DMs as well. So I got the call through DMs. He came through a disco, closed him. Very very short sales cycles, actually, something that really surprised me in the beginning. And so pretty much, yeah, we signed both of them on. All the retainers were paid by the next Monday, which is pretty crazy. And then basically, yeah, from that, it's just been going steady. Like I have had like those initial clients, I've signed on a couple more, and then eventually I decided to move out. So that's pretty much where I am now. I'm actually in Colombia, in my apartment, funny enough. So moved down there just a couple of days ago, actually, like about like 4 days ago. But yes, that's pretty much where I am now. I have 2 copywriters who are currently handling a lot of LinkedIn postings, a lot of the service delivery. The stage I'm at right now is that, of course, like I'm looking to scale. Ideally, I want to be at 30K maybe by the end of the quarter is what I'm thinking. But I really want to have, because the thing about running an agency is that it's a very difficult model to scale, because like it's very reliant on your ability to translate your own execution into systems, right? And to do that takes a large amount of time and a large amount of effort, a lot of iteration, et cetera, et cetera. So if you scale too fast, you'll eventually like start getting to a point where you can't maintain the execution across your client base. So then, you start to churn people, you start to get shitty results, right? You don't want that. So my approach is just kind of like slow scaling from this point, because if I add on more like overhead from this point, I won't be able to like deliver the same level of quality for all my clients, right? So that's the stage I'm at right now.
Wow, that was a very comprehensive answer. You give us a lot of food for next question. So, yeah, for the audience, just a little bit of context. Me and Dylan met at Agency Velocity, and honestly, I was probably one of the lowest performing members of that community, and Dylan was one of the highest performing members. And yeah, we're both of the same age, so since then, Dylan has been a big inspiration for me. And yeah, leading this into my next question, that what is the main thing that you think, Dylan, differentiates between success and failure in business? That's something I've been wanting to ask you for a really long time, and I think the audience will get value from this.
So yeah, no, that's a phenomenal question, by the way. Great question. And I think the main answer, because there's a lot of answers to that, right? Because there's a lot of
Yeah.
things that you have to. It's a big mindset thing, especially. So there's a lot that you have to kind of like remember and apply in order to be able to just kind of like make that transition, right? But the main thing, I think, is that you have to realize that the game isn't about just like knowing how to do it like immediately, like doing a bunch of research, like doing like a bunch of learning and stuff, like reading like a lot of like books, watching a lot of YouTube videos, taking a lot of notes, right? Like learning it that way. The real way to learn how to get like good at something that can become a marketable skill is to just fuck around and find out. That's pretty much it. You just have to try shit out. That's exactly right, because you just have to try shit out until something works. Because in the beginning, it's like even when I was doing cold email, I was horrible at it, right? But then like I made the commitment to run a cold email campaign, brand new cold email campaign every single 2 days. And then eventually I got like, market feedback. I got, like input on my, like I got better reply rates over time as my copywriting became better. My targeting improved as well, right? So the reality is just like, there's no like book, there's no resource, there's no person out there who can teach you like how to succeed in like the realm you're trying to succeed in. The reality is you just have to try a bunch of different stuff and then see what sticks, and then basically take the input you get from trying stuff out, and then basically use that to improve your strategy, and then use it to like kind of like reuse that strategy again, get more input, improve it. So that's kind of how the cycle goes, right? So you just have to try stuff out, get input on it, improve yourself. You have to, if something doesn't work, obviously stop doing that. If something does, double down on that, right? The reality is it's super, super simple. And a lot of people, they think, if I try something out and I fail like the first time, then, I'm fucked, right? That's the end. Reality is it's not the end, right? That's like kind of, it's the, the means by which you learn, right? So if I like fail like my first cold email campaign, for example, right? I'm not going to die. I'm not going to like not be able to run like another cold email campaign ever again, right? Like I could just pick myself up, buy a few more domains, buy some more addresses, and just rip another piece of copy to an entirely new list, right? There's nothing stopping you from failing a million times. And then so the reality is like the greatest kind of method to succeed in the fastest way possible is literally to just try things out, try like a big variety of things out as frequently as possible, as much as you can, in the most simplistic way possible. That's really it. Just try shit out as rapidly as you can, get feedback as rapidly as you can, and just implement as rapidly as you can. That's really it. That's really all there is to it.
And Did you do the same thing for LinkedIn as well?
Oh yeah, oh 100%. Like I had posts that like completely flopped. Like the reason that I have a strategy today is because I tried out like 30 or 40 post formats in the past that didn't work, right? And then like 3 or 4, or I think it's like 5 of those or whatever, they did work. And then so I decided to implement those with the strategy, right? And so yeah, same thing with LinkedIn. I had to try out a bunch of different shit. A lot of it didn't work. A very small percentage of it did, and that's what I moved forward with.
Got it. So while putting these inputs in, how do you differentiate between each individual one? You said you tried 30 to 40 formats. You were making sure that all of them were individually different so that you can get a better idea of a test. Like, as you know, in agency velocity, they used to teach that you should only test one variable at a time. And so, yeah, because if you do the wrong thing consistently without realizing it, it still doesn't work, right? So, how do you take that into account?
Yeah, totally. So I think the main thing there is that basically like you're thinking that okay, so like let's say I make this like one post. There's like 20 different variables in this one post. There's 20 different things I
Right.
can adjust, right? The reality is like you're not going to make a big difference in performance by just changing one little thing, right? The thing is like if you so if, like for example, if I was writing a LinkedIn post, right, and then let's say like I experimented by like changing like this sentence structure in like one single sentence, right? It's not going to make a difference like no matter how many formats I try, right? But if I took that same like concept and I took that post and I basically did an entirely new concept of the post every single time, like an entirely different idea behind the post. Like one poster talked about like cold email angles, one poster talked about like deliverability, right? I tried out all of those ideas, right? Like I like basically changed the post massively. I changed the entire post, right? Then that's when I'm going to get input. So the reality is you can really just make decisions. The only way you can make definitive decisions is by basically making a big change, right? Seeing if that change works, and then making another big change, and then seeing if that change works, right? You're never really getting it by through kind of like small iterative changes, right? So the one thing that I like to say in that regard is that there's a big difference between like optimization and like proving an angle, let's say. So proving an angle, and let's say like we have like a cold email campaign, right? So I want to run like 4 different emails, and basically each of those emails is like very, very different to each other, right? So that there's big differences in terms of each of those emails. So basically, I can use that to kind of find, okay, what's the big picture thing that actually works in this situation? So like, let's say, for example, tested 4 emails, email number 2 works, and it's like massively different from all the other emails, of course, that it can go into email 2 and I can say, okay, the main big concept behind this email actually works. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to improve its performance by changing all the little things, right? So the idea is you do like kind of your big, like, try different shit out phase at the very start in order to find like the kind of like the format that works. And then once you have the format, it's all about changing those little things to optimize it, right? So you change the big things to find an avenue that works, and you change the little things to like advance down that avenue. It's kind of how you want to think of it.
Got it. Got it. So you have a whole framework for testing and finding the winning angle, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a lot of our strategy today because like we already know what works, right? Like we already have a strategy, so we're not really doing a lot of testing anymore. So a lot of like our LinkedIn stuff revolves around just kind of like looking at our different accounts in like our clients' industry, for example, and then seeing what works for them, and then taking those concepts and applying that to our own strategy, and then using that, right? So that's kind of how we've found to do it. But we've already done all the testing in the beginning, right? So we already kind of know what works best.
Got it. Got it. So like we both are from a marketing background. For us, the inputs are really clear, like for sending cold email campaigns or email or like LinkedIn posts and all. But for someone who's in typical engineering or business college, like for example, like Sarthak, he's a coder, fucking great coder. So what kind of like how do you know what's the right input to put in, like, and get that feedback loop out? Because in marketing it's really fast to get feedback. With other different skills, how would you say, like, how would you think through it?
Yeah, so that's it's always difficult when you don't have immediate feedback, right? And then so I'd say the
Okay.
biggest thing probably is to just I mean, fine, because there's always methods of getting immediate feedback, even if you're in a situation like that, right? And then so like different methods could be like, speaking, like having a mentor, for example, right, and running things by them. Going to networking conferences, going to speaking conferences, what have you, right? And just trying to network with other people, like getting other people's input on things. So I'd say like the reality is like there's always a way to find like a situation where you can get instant feedback, right? A lot of the time maybe you're not looking hard enough, maybe you haven't like actually tried looking at like different sources to be able to do that. So yeah, I'd say like my biggest piece of advice there is to literally just find a venue or an avenue where you can get instant feedback and leverage that, because you can't really make like quantifiable like iterative decisions based on just like small like insufficient long-term feedback that makes things like all muddy and complicated, right? So the reality is you want to be in a situation or you want to find a method of getting really quick feedback no matter in what situation you are in.
Got it. Makes sense. You talked about mindset, and this whole comeback from like shutting everything down to hitting it again, getting it back again. That is an example of an exceptional bulletproof mindset, as I call it. Just could you elaborate a bit more on this? How did you deal with that? How did you think through, like coming back, all of the things that went in your head? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is that there's two really big things in this. So the number one is that like I didn't really care, right? So like not giving a shit, I think is like one of the greatest mindset skills that you can have. Like really, because like my philosophy to living a good life is to basically just like concentrate on what actually matters and what actually makes like a fundamental like difference in terms of fulfillment in your life, and then basically everything else you can consider a distraction, cut that out, right? So that's kind of like the philosophy I applied to when I was in a situation where I was like, okay, I grew my agency, then I had to shut it down, then I grew it again, I had to shut it down, right? So yeah, what I really try to do is just kind of like isolate myself to like only caring about the high leverage activities or the high leverage like mindset and thoughts that actually like made a different terms of fulfillment in my own life. So I was able to like those extras, like those like that extra noise, like for example like my parents doubting that I could like run something, or like my friends like thinking I was doing like some stupid bullshit, right? So basically I decided to kind of like isolate that all out and just solely focus on my own love for actually doing things with my agency. And that carries on to my next point, because like number two I think is the biggest thing, is that you have to actually not love, you have to kind of have an interest or a really high devotion to what you do, right? So like a lot of people, they'll tell you like, okay, love what you do, like, but the reality is it's not really like that in real life. Like you're going to be in situations where like, for example, you're grinding on a clay table after like fucking do duplicates or something, and you're not going to like that necessarily, right? So you want to choose something not based on what you love, but what based on like something that you're actually you can get into a flow state doing something, you can get devoted to doing. So the reason I chose LinkedIn is that when I was writing LinkedIn posts, I didn't like writing LinkedIn posts, right? But it was super, super easy to get really devoted into the flow of writing LinkedIn posts. So like I found myself like, for example, writing 3 posts in a row. I got super dialed in and I just like, thought about nothing else or just thought of that, right? It was a very fulfilling experience to be doing that. So I just wrote 3 posts just like that, right? Just like not thinking about anything else, just isolating myself to like the high fulfillment activity that I was doing in that very moment. And so I think I read a book, it was a while back, and it basically it was kind of like a research book on like it was a study of human happiness and human fulfillment, right? What they found is that the most genuine, long-lasting human happiness actually comes from being locked in, right? So basically being in a situation where you are doing something that genuinely fulfills you and something that you can devote 100% of your mind, 100% of your being to doing, right? So that's where true happiness comes from. And then that's like completely similar to the experience that I felt, like, doing a lot of my agency stuff, because I felt like I felt that I could get extremely, extremely devoted, and extremely focused on like the particular aspects of what I was doing, and like I could be in a state where I was in complete flow while doing it, even though like I had a bunch of other stuff going on in my life. I had school, I had parents, blah 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 blah. I could still just focus on that one particular thing and find fulfillment and happiness from that. So the reality is, like with the mindset, those are the two biggest things. So number one, not giving a shit about anything else that shouldn't matter, right? And only focusing on what should. Like having something, because you can't, like, this is no non-negotiable. You can't not have this. You have to have something where you can completely devote yourself to and kind of find happiness in the fulfillment of doing that particular thing while ignoring like everything else that's going on as well. So those are the two things, really.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, got it. Just not giving a shit and having really like having something that can give you the flow state, right? And Yeah, I was actually so deep into listening that I forgot what my next question was. Wait. So yeah, um, yeah. So regarding just focusing on one thing for an extended period of time. So like in business, it's usually kind of complicated because you have a lot of things that are demanding your attention, right? And you are a big proponent, as far as I'm observing, is that just focus really deep on one thing for a long time. So when you have these things that are consuming your attention, so how do you focus and get back to that one thing and not get distracted by these 10 other things?
Yeah, no, that's a good question because like you have like for example like clients pinging you all the time on Slack, right? You have like people just emailing you, people sending you LinkedIn DMs, right? So it's always hard to focus on one particular thing. And then so what I usually find is that the best way to do this is to literally just like kind of separate your day to small sections of doing like one particular task, right? So you don't want to be multitasking, like because multitasking like never works, especially from like an entrepreneurial standpoint. What you really want to be doing is like for example with my agency, right? So like every morning I'll wake up around like 7 a.m., right? And then so what I spend my time doing, I do some like miscellaneous like daily client tasks, for example, and then like I'll write my own post for my own personal LinkedIn, and then I'll post that right after, let's say like at 9 a.m. I'll do my commenting, I'll do my engagement, right? So once all like the daily tasks are done, like the daily repetitive tasks that I do for like clients, the posts I write for myself, like when I'm posting, then I kind of get into the sales calls, usually the calls I have for the day. So usually how it works out is like, okay, so from 7 to 9, I'm doing like miscellaneous tasks and putting out my own post. Then from 9 to 12, I'm basically just like in calls, like sometimes until 1 o'clock. So like let that be like onboarding calls, disco calls, demo calls, what have you, right? I'm just in calls for like the entirety of the morning. Right after that, I eat lunch, and then that's when you get into the deep work part of the day, right? So it usually happens to be around 1 to like I like to do like 7:30 or like 2 to like 8 a lot of the time. And then so what I usually do is I basically say, okay, I have 4 big tasks that I have to work on, for instance, right? I know that task number 1 is going to take me 2 hours. Task number 2 is going to take me 1.5 hours. Task number 3, another 1.5 hours. So that makes 5 hours so far. I need to fill an extra one, and then I have a smaller task at the very end. It takes 1 hour. So 4 tasks, they take 6 hours in total. And so what I do is I take like, let's say I'm working from 2 to 8 just on deep work. I basically just section out like 2 hour, hour, or hour and a half pieces, sections of that 6 hour period to doing those particular tasks, right? And that's it's a very simple way to structure a day, right? I'm a big Notion guy, so I have like my calendar on Notion, I have my to-do list on Notion, I've got like everything on there, right? Because it keeps me super organized, keeps me super dialed in, very like streamlined and focused on what I should be doing, right? So that's really in like the face of like having a lot of shit to deal with on a daily basis. What you'll usually find is that a lot of the client communication, everything like that happens in the morning. So it's usually relegated to like 9 or 12. Sometimes in like very particular cases, you'll get some in the afternoon, but not really. So that frees up a lot of that time to do a lot of deep work. And then so like even if a client messages you like later in the afternoon, let's say, you don't really have to get back until next morning. They don't really expect you to get back until next morning a lot of the time, unless it's urgent. Like 90% of the time, you don't have to get back until the next morning. So you have a lot of flexibility, and like the pings you have to answer like in the afternoon. So yeah, I mean like it's really just a game of specifying a certain time of your day where you need to be doing like some repetitive tasks, some like client communication tasks, and then like having like a larger part of your day, maybe in the afternoon or maybe like even earlier in the morning, like I did when I was in high school, of you just working on deep work related tasks. And that's really it. You just have to section your day smartly.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. Well, I hope you're good on time.
I'm good on
I'll
time.
just
Yeah, don't worry about it.
awesome. Awesome. So yeah, just um, like most of the audience which you have on a podcast, like they haven't yet started their first thing yet. So what advice would you give them? Like, how did you find that a cold email agency was the thing that you wanted to do?
Yeah, 100%. So I found cold email just through YouTube, actually, just like going through YouTube, like watching a bunch of videos on like online businesses to start or like whatever that at the time I was doing. I came across like Levy's YouTube channel, as you know, and then I started like consuming a lot of that kind of content. And then I was like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. Well, this guy knows what he's talking about, and like clearly he gets good results. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a lead gen agency. However, the way I recommend like most people to do it these days is that you want to ideally not go into like a set avenue in like the entrepreneurship space. Like I wouldn't recommend you to actually like start like a SaaS company. I wouldn't recommend you to start like a cold email agency, right? Like something like very generic. I recommend like starting something extremely specific for like providing a very specific service or maybe even like product for a very specific niche that you have like a unique advantage in. So the reason I chose LinkedIn is because like I had experience doing LinkedIn for myself as an agency, right? And then of course I was selling the service to other agencies, right? So it was an extremely special position because I had a very specialized service that was very valuable to one particular type of people. So when you're kind of starting, like when you're choosing something to do, you should be that guy who like goes on YouTube and is like, okay, top 10 like online businesses to start or whatever, right? You should be the kind of guy that looks at your own skill set, looks at your own situation and says, okay, so I know this industry actually pretty well, right? I know that they have this particular pain point, right? This very niche, very unknown pain point to a lot of other industries. Then I have this very specific idea for a potential solution that I can use to solve that. So ideally, every company you should start or every like venture you should think about should be completely kind of like not entirely novel idea. It should be just be something new that not a lot of other people are doing, right? Because you'll get in situations like lead gen. It's difficult as fuck, right? I'm going to be honest. Like it's extremely difficult, saturated space. And the reason it is because, there's a low barrier of entry and everyone's basically doing the same thing. So, your offer gets commoditized. It's very hard to differentiate. So you want to be in a space where you can create something very, very novel. You can solve a very specific problem for a very specific industry using a solution that nobody else is really offering. And then so now your solution isn't commoditized. It's easier to sell because no one's heard of it before. So you can automatically pique like interest in like potential just interest in what you're offering due to the fact that it's not commoditized yet. Not everybody knows. It's not nobody's solution aware of your solution yet, right? So so like what I'd say is like don't just like follow like the generic like, okay, these are the top 10 online businesses that started, like something like that. I would just basically, if I was starting over again, I would choose a very particular skill set that I have. I choose a very particular industry that I know, and I choose a pain point that industry has, and I'd sell a very specific solution to that industry because the offer is not commoditized yet. It's a lot easier to sell. It's a lot easier to get curiosity for it, and you can scale it pretty easily if you know the system in and out.
Got it. Great answer. Sarthak, you have any follow-up questions with that?
Yeah, I actually do. So you said choose a niche, choose something of an unknown pain point in any industry. But let's say I'm from the tech industry. The problem that I face is I do not have enough resources. This is what I feel. I do not have enough resources to pinpoint any, a pain point which I can actually capitalize on. Because I do not know a lot of pain points standing just from a customer point of view. And by the time I come to know about it, it's already fixed or some already tech giants are working on it. So I just can't capitalize on anything. What do you think? I am just not able to find that start, that one thing that I can help myself to start something. That start, that kickstart that the vehicles get, I'm just not able to get that.
Yeah, well, that's the problem that a lot of people have, really. And like especially like when I was running cold email, for example, that's the problem I had because I knew, like, for example, for like a lot of these larger contracts, like a lot of like these larger companies that needed like a GTM related service, you had to have a pretty big budget for tools. You had to have like a lot of infrastructure. You had to have a lot of team members to be able to handle that, right? So the reality is, like, for example, in tech, I know tech is very competitive because like you said, like once there's a problem, usually like in the next couple of days, like a solution comes in and just bulldozes everyone, right? So what I'd like to really bring up in like situations like this is the concept of like sophistication arbitrage is what I call it. So basically taking very sophisticated methods from like one industry, like for example, like cold email, right? So in cold email, like you're able to have like these like what are called GTM workflows, where you can have like an automated system that basically takes like scrapes a lead from like LinkedIn or whatever, enriches all their info, like qualifies them with AI and like personalizes outreach for them with AI, right? So in the cold email industry, right, in the GTM, like for SaaS, for example, industry, it's a very, very common thing. And it's like known as like the baseline for like the level of advanced workflows that are in that industry. But however, if you took a technology like that and you applied that, and you took that to like, for example, like local plumbers in like the United States, right? Those guys will have never heard of something like that, right? They're still running like cold calls from like fucking spreadsheets, right? So they're in a very unsophisticated kind of space. So what you really want to be doing is you want to be taking like very sophisticated strategies and technologies from like higher level industries that move very, very fast taking those and then applying those to industries that are more antiquated. And then so usually what ends up happening is that obviously like when let's say like I brought in like the GTM solutions that I talked about from like very competitive cold email, and I brought them to like home service companies in the States, then I would be in a situation where I could just like bulldoze all of like the competition, all the other potential solutions in there with something completely novel that would just blow my prospects' minds and like create automatic value. And then so the big benefit of that is like, for example, for the GTM stuff, like SaaS companies, because like everybody offers the same thing, right? So like everyone offers this advanced like workflow for like cold email SaaS, right? And then so basically when you're in that kind of situation, your pricing is more dependent on like what other people charge, because your service now is extremely commoditized. And then so basically like you're going to be charged like, let's say 2, 3, or even 4K retainers, just because there's so much competition. But if you took that same concept and moved that down to home service companies, where like you're pretty much the only person that's providing this solution, it's actually a more valuable solution for them because nobody else in the industry is using it, so they have a massive head start on everybody else. You can charge like 5 or 6K retainers, like using a version of that solution that is far less sophisticated, right? So that's sophistication arbitrage in its own sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now that comes up to my second question. Like, see, when we use sophistication arbitrage, we are using something different, something new. But a problem that I personally face is I don't know many times whether what I'm doing is gonna lead to something. And what ends up happening is I at times do not believe in my idea enough to give it enough time to rise to a level that is impactful. And I am, let's say, in 5 days, I haven't given it enough time. It hasn't risen because of what I haven't given it enough time. And I am like, okay, let's not get into this. This is obviously not working. While it could be working, I realize that later, but I'm just not giving it enough time because, again, I do not have belief enough. And what in psychologically goes inside me is I do not believe it enough, and I do what I know the best. That is, focus on studies, focus on building my skills, but not enough to applying those same skills that I have learned. So, anything on that?
Yeah, so I'd say, so the number one problem there is that it's not actually like the amount of time that you give something to like work itself out. It's the fact that you haven't like actually gotten validation for it yet. And then so what I would do, like let's say like I was starting something completely new, right? The first thing that I would do is I would basically like make a very basic offer for my solution. I do this in like 2 hours. So let's say like I sold, like let's use my previous example, right? I sold like advanced GTM workflows to like home service companies, right? I make like an offer based on that. Like I make an offer that says, okay, like this is what we do, this is who we do it for, these are the pain points that we solve, this is the benefit that we give, and basically take that and translate that into like a cold email campaign, and then just send it. I blast that campaign to like 10,000 like home service companies, and I'd see like, okay, is there an actual interest for this in the market? And then so if there is, then I fully pursue the idea, right? If there's not, then I don't. So what you want to be doing is you want to basically sell before you build. And what I mean by that is like in the initial stage, like on day one, let's say, you want to have a very basic idea of like what you're going to do, the solution you're going to provide. And then what you want to do from that is you want to take that solution and then try to sell it to people, right? And if people like start to buy into that solution, or there's interest around that solution from like a broad group of people, then that's when you know, okay, then I have something here. Then you actually build a solution and then you actually start to sell it. So that's the number one thing I can do, because like by building, by selling before you build, you don't have to like, you don't waste like 2 weeks building something, right? You can just get validation for it immediately. So you have a much higher ROI on your time, because the only time that you'll actually spend building is after you've qualified an idea and it's worth building. So you can spend that time doing that. And so you can run through like let's say 5 ideas in the span of 2 weeks if you're like really going hard on it, right? And like if you were to take the approach of like, okay, I'm going to build this first and then I'm going to sell it, you would only be able to qualify like 2 days, two ideas in the span of like 2 weeks, right? Because the reality is like you want to like start selling the solution first. There's no point in building something there's no interest around it, right? So you want to sell the solution first. If there's enough interest, then you want to build it. So that's number one thing I'd say.
Got it. So I have a follow-up question regarding that. So you want to validate demand before you build something. Got it. And this is a classic when someone comes into lead gen, you first sell them on lead gen and then you do the lead gen for them. But how do you make sure that you will get results for them? Because you currently haven't built a system and you don't know if you're good enough actually to deliver that value. So yeah, and you, Dylan, get crazy results for your clients. So it's not that you just sell and don't get results, right? So how do you make sure that the quality of results is never compromised when you do that?
So so I'll talk about like two different like ways to approach this. So I'll talk about like one that's maybe more interesting to your audience, like when you're just starting out. Then I'll talk about like how that actually scales. So when you're first starting out, what you want to do is like I'm a very big proponent of working for free. And the thing you want to like, so obviously like working for free, like it's completely no risk to the client at all. It gives you flexibility as well as like try different things out. You could also do a thing where like you do like an upfront fee, and then like that fee is fully refundable, like within like the first couple of months if you want to, right? You could do something like that if you can't afford the tech stack initially. So I'd run that. The thing you really have to worry about when you're like doing that kind of offer is that you're going to attract some really low quality clients if you do like 100% like free money back guarantee kind of thing. So a lot of the time what I've found is that a lot of like larger companies, for example, will still be receptive to those offers. Like for example, like the first LinkedIn content client I had, like when I, pitched him with like content, I was like, okay, it's going to be $800 a month retainer. However, it's fully refundable as well. So I pitched him with that, right? But the reality is like this was like a very much a larger client, and he was like very receptive to the offer, but he wasn't like one of those guys who was like so desperate for like some performance-based results, and he had like a shitty offer on the back end that you couldn't get results for, and like he was just like asking, like he was going out and like, okay, I just want to like work with someone I can spend $0 on because I have like no confidence that my offers can perform at all, right? You don't want clients like that. You don't want like cheap, like shitty clients with bad offers that you can't get results for. What you do want is you want high quality clients who will still be receptive to that kind of initial offer so you can close them. So what I do if I was first starting out is I wouldn't like, take my like offer, my performance based, like, okay, it's free until like things start to work kind of offer, right? I wouldn't take that. I wouldn't sell it to like a very broad audience, right? I wouldn't put that out to like everybody because like you're going to attract like shitty clients for that offer, right? What I would do is I basically set like a very like tight baseline for like the people I'm going to work with. So for example, if I was selling like lead gen to like agencies, right? Very overdone. I wouldn't recommend doing it these days. It's just so competitive starting out. But what I would do is I basically just say, okay, I'm only going to work with agencies that are doing over $25,000 in monthly recurring revenue. I'm only going to work with agencies who have a proven offer. I'm only going to work with agencies who like fit X, Y, Z criteria or whatever, right? So you want to set your bar high, even though you're just starting out. You want to set your bar high because nobody wants to work with shitty clients, right? Because like if you work with a shitty client, like it's a huge time sink. You're probably not going to get a case study off of that, right? You're much better off working with like higher end clients because the reality is higher end clients are still going to take risks, even like especially when there's no risk actually involved. They can still like find you like at least semi credible if you present yourself well. And if you have like zero case studies, you present yourself well, you can usually just sign those like good initial clients just based on like your fully guaranteed back offer, just by the basis that you know what you're doing. And so that's how I would do it if I was just starting out, right? So I'd find like I'd set a very high bar for what I'm going to work with, and then I wouldn't worry about those people. I wouldn't worry about imposter syndrome at all. I just start to deliver results for those people. And it's easy to get results for these people because if they have money, they have a good offer. So it's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward in that regard. So, but how in terms of like scaling, in terms of keeping quality up when you scale, the main thing with an agency is like, okay, so like when you hit like 15K, like then okay, like you're doing well now, right? But your entire service delivery is based on your own ability to execute, right? It's not based on the system. And so what you really want to think about when you're kind of scaling an agency is like you're no longer like when you get past 15K, you're no longer selling your execution ability. You're selling the systems that you've built using that execution ability, right? So basically, let's say like for example, I had 15K like a week ago, right? Personally. And then so basically I was in a situation where I was like, okay, so like I'm writing all the posts manually. I'm doing all the shit myself, right? I don't have any like processes in Notion. I don't have this like big Google Doc guide for my future employees that tells them how to write effective posts. So I decided, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take all my execution skill. I'm going to document everything that I do to deliver my service. I'm going to put that into like comprehensive guides and comprehensive SOPs and procedures. And I'm basically just going to use that to deliver the service to my clients instead. So I basically took all of my execution skill, everything that I knew knew about writing LinkedIn posts. I translated that into guides, into SOPs, which are called, for the audience, standard operating procedures. It's basically like a process for your employees to follow to do things in your business. So basically, I translate that to those kind of systems, and I spend all my time, like when I hit 50K a month, I wouldn't spend that time sending out more clients. I'd spend that time just building out internal systems to be able to deliver my service. So suddenly, selling my agency's services didn't become about, okay, I'm selling my own execution, I'm selling my own ability to write good LinkedIn posts. It became about, okay, I have all these systems that I've created on the back end. I'm now selling using this process to get you these results. So you're selling systems instead of your ability to execute. So that's the main thing. Like, you want to be building a really tight service delivery system using like the performance that you like, your expertise. You want to take your expertise, use that to build a system, and you want to transition to selling that system. That's the only real way you can scale. And then every single new employee should be trained very, very well. You want to hire. Hiring is fucking hard, right? But the entire idea behind hiring is that, like, you want to hire people with a good mentality. Don't want to look for skill necessarily, because skill doesn't really matter when you've already like built out the infrastructure for them to use to supplement their own lack of skill, right? So you want to really be looking at kind of like, their mentality. Like, are they a good person to work with? Like, are they on time? Are they responsible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You want to be looking for the qualities of a general good employee, not someone who's good at that specific skill that you're like hiring for, right? So that's the main idea behind that. So as you scale, it's about systems. It's about hiring people based off of more personality than actual skill set. Like, when you're just starting out, you want to set that high bar, and then you want to start delivering results on a pay-per-result basis usually.
Got it. Got it. That makes perfect sense. So, coming back to the whole college thing once again, and did you ever prioritize your academics, or you were always like, I'm gonna do this business thing, let the fuck the academics?
Yeah, well, like, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I was in business school, right? Like super easy, like coloring books, right? Like, it was. So I was in a position where like I didn't really need to like concentrate on school at all. It was like so easy, right? So yeah, I mean, like, I just like my business took full precedent over that pretty much. So yeah.
Got it. Got it. Sarthak, if you don't have any other question, I'll ask one final question.
Yeah, I do not have any particular question. But one thing I still want to ask is, um, for people who still can't find that one thing that they want to do, what would you tell them? Because for a lot of the audience, they just don't know what they want to do. They're not able to find that one little interest inside of them. And for me also, I have a lot of interests, a lot of, and Tim can agree with me. It spreads over from tech to designing to creativity to learning. It sometimes also becomes a matter of which interest do I give into more and which interest do I cut back on.
Yeah. So, and I mean, that's the problem I had actually back in grade 11 when I was turning out too. So exact same thing. But I mean, really, it just comes back to just trying stuff out. Like, because you can validate something working like within a day or like within a couple of days. If you just like in the morning, let's say you think of an idea, you think of an offer, and then in the afternoon you just start like cold calling or cold emailing people about the offer and trying to see if there's interest. So, I mean, the reality is that, I mean, like, yeah, like you're gonna have places where like you're out of ideas, you don't know, you don't have anything to create based off of. Like, the number one thing I would say is basically like think of problems you have in your own life and like think about solving them. Think of problems like not even like that you have individually. Like, think of problems like, for example, like my dad's friend. He was like a carpenter and he had issues like sourcing materials, right? So I could think of like, okay, maybe I make like an aggregator system that like scrapes a bunch of like local supply boards and basically like gives him a list of like tools that he can purchase on a daily basis or something like that, right? So like you should really you shouldn't limit yourself to like only problems you have. Like, maybe like look at problems your friends are having, look at problems your friends are having, go look at your problems your friends' parents are having, stuff like that. So I'd say like that's one of the number one things. But yeah, I mean, like it really just comes down to the just like thinking of something off the back of your head, saying like, okay, this is a solution. I don't know if it's gonna work. I have no clue if it's gonna work. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. Let the market find out, right? And then trying to sell that solution and then like see if it's gonna work. So like when you have an idea, like you shouldn't waste time. Like every single second you spend like debating, okay, is this solution worth building? Is the solution gonna work, right? That's time wasted because you haven't tried it out in the market yet. You don't know, you have no fucking clue how it's gonna perform in terms of an offer, right? The only thing you can do, the most definitive source of information you can get is, okay, if I pitch this to someone, will they buy it? And if it's a yes, then you should go all in on the idea. If it's a no, leave the idea, try something else. That's the number one thing.
Thank you, Dylan. Thank you so much.
Got it. So now the final question, and honestly, no interview in the history of podcasts is complete without asking this question. So Dylan, if you were starting from scratch, from the beginning, no connections, no money, no skills, what would you do to get to 10K in, let's say, a year?
So I would just pick, so I do the exact same thing, right? I find a very industry specific thing, right? I look at my own skill set. I look at like what my friends are doing, like what my friends, like families have problems with, like what everyone has problems with. Like what if my friend like knows an industry expert, like what problems is this person in this industry having? I'd spend a day just like ideating an offer based off that. I look at that problem because it's way easier to start like problem first than solution first. I look at that problem, I'd be like, okay, how can I solve this problem? And then I'd like come up with a solution. I'd be like, okay, so this solution is like feasible to build. I don't know if it's gonna work yet, so I'm gonna try it out. So that I build a very basic offer. Like I literally take a Google Doc and like write down like what pain points is solving, who is this solving it for, like what's my ICP. And then what I do, like for the next 1 or 2 months or however fucking long it takes, I'd send 10 LinkedIn DMs a day. I'd send like 100 cold emails. It depends on like how much money you have. Like if you're starting from like $0, like you can't afford cold email info. But like so in that case, I just go like 100% lean in on LinkedIn DMs and cold calling because it's free. And so I just go 100% into that. So if you make like, because you can make $100 a day if you want to, if you're really, really devoted. So I go $100 a day. I make $100 a day. So if you make $100 a day, start like, let's say like 20 LinkedIn conversations a day, right? Throughout the next like 2 or 3 months, and you have a good offer, right, that people are actually willing to pay for, that you validated, it is literally impossible for you not to hit 10K a month. It is very, very difficult. Your offer has to be either the shittiest offer known to man, or you just have to have like the shittiest selling skills known to man, but you will hit 10K if you keep up those cadences. And then so in terms of like, because like getting to 10K a month, it's not as simple as just like sending a bunch of outbound, like getting a bunch of meetings booked, and then like you're at 10K, right? You still have to like, move those people through a pipeline and then, deliver your service with those people. So I have this concept that I call like the golden funnel for like lead gen, for like agencies in general. So the golden funnel basically consists of like the pipeline in which you move someone who's like completely cold, never heard of your agency or their service before, and you move them to a happy client who you're delivering a recurring service for, right? And so the main components of this golden pipeline is that like, okay, number one at the very start is your outreach or your inbound or your content, like whatever method you use to like contact people to get them as clients. That's your first step. Second step is your sales process. What you want to do with your sales process, you want to keep it really, really rigid. I like to use a 2-call process. You want to keep it rigid. You want to have like a really in-depth discovery process as well. So the entire point of a discovery it happens at the very start of like your first sales call with someone, for example. It's basically just asking like 5-10 questions about them and their situation. So you want to understand like, what their what pain points they're having, like how they want to solve those pain points, what they tried before, et cetera, and like getting the answers to those questions as well allows you to like disqualify them if they're unqualified. And then so basically, you want to do a discovery session, you want to do like your initial discovery call, you want to do a demo call, and then you move on to an onboarding call. So that's the second step of your pipeline, right? Is the sales process. That's moving them from like, okay, it's a book call, to moving them to a place where like, okay, they've sold, they've paid, they've signed a contract, they're ready to go. And then so the next phase of this is your onboarding, and onboarding is very, very, very important. So basically onboarding is like kind of the process by which like you take your client and you set up your service for them. It's as simple as that. So in onboarding, you want to minimize the amount of time that it takes to start delivering your service, and you want to make your onboarding process as simple as possible, especially when you're first starting out. Like a lot of people like tend to overcomplicate their onboarding processes. It does not need to be complicated. If it can be done like in 3 days, there's no reason for you to add more time. You can do it in 3 days, just blast it out in 3 days. And so onboarding, it should be simple. It should require a minimal amount of steps, and you should communicate every part of your progress to your client as well. It should be very systemized. You should literally have just like a step-by-step checklist of like shit you need to do on onboarding, and then that's it. You should have it like by a day. So like day 1, I need to do this, and you check all that off. And day 2, you need to do this, and you check all that off. And eventually, through that 3-day process, you've now taken a client who's like paid and like signed the contract to a client who you're delivering your service for. And then the next part, the last piece of the golden pipeline, is your service delivery. And this is the hardest part to get right? Because for every single client, it's going to be a different situation, right? Like it depends on like what you're selling, but like in a lot of situations, like it requires a lot of like execution capability to get results for like all different types of clients, right? So like let's say like I'm selling like my service like 3 clients, for example. Like I've onboarded 3 clients. I'm selling the same service to them. I'm using the same service to get them results, but I have to use a different method in order to get each and every one of the results because there's just such different companies, such different offers. So service delivery is pretty difficult to get, pretty stressful at times, especially in the beginning when you're not delivering. But the one thing I'll say about service delivery is it becomes much, much easier over time. Because like, for example, like if you work with like, if I'm a cold email agency and I've worked with like a fintech company, right? And it took me 2 months to like figure shit out and start getting results for them. I can now like sign more fintech companies. And since I already know what works for that company that I already have, I can just translate to them. And suddenly it doesn't take 2 months to get the results. They can see results within the first 2 weeks, right? So service delivery gets easier over time. So that's the golden pipeline. And then so your entire job as an agency owner is building a very, very, very basic and very simple version of your golden pipeline that works. So by works, I mean like it's successful and like you get like a decent amount of lead flow on a monthly basis. And like your closing rate is like, let's say 20%. That's an acceptable rate. Your onboarding process, like, it's quick, it's comprehensive, it's pretty simple to do. And then your service delivery, like gets your client like at least like a 5x ROI on what they're paying, right? And so once you have that pipeline set up, right, your entire job now is to basically improve different aspects of that pipeline, right? Because that's inherently how you scale. So if you want to improve, for example, the performance of the first step of your pipeline, which is getting clients, you want to either like improve your outreach by testing at different angles, like finding a better angle that works, like maybe starting some new campaigns that perform better, or maybe just like increasing your volume, right, to get more inbound leads booked in. And then for like your sales process, you want to obviously be modifying like your call scripts and processes as well. You want to be improving yourself as a salesperson. And then for the onboarding, like add more like items to it that would like actually improve your like service delivery. And then for the service delivery, obviously that's a big thing, but you want to optimize that. So inherently, like the methodology of scaling an agency is just like having a very basic golden pipeline that works and then optimizing that over time, right? And you want to start as simple as possible because you don't want to overcomplicate things at the start because it makes it more complex in order to scale it in the future. Since a lot of like 90% of the stuff that you add to like an overcomplicated system is just not needed at all. You just need the 10%. So your entire job is to just basically like specify the 10% you actually need to use to build it with the 10%, and then like add like the 90% later if it makes sense to add it, right? Or like improve it based on like your own knowledge. So that's how I go from 0 to 10K in the shortest time possible. Just like find a very specific service to offer to a very specific niche, run a fuckload of outreach, right? And then basically just have like procure that golden pipeline in the quickest and most simplest way possible, and like tune it around until I get something that works, and scale the shit out of it until I can get past that number. That's pretty much it.
Beautiful. That was an amazing interview, Dylan. I appreciate you taking out the time for it. Thanks a lot, man. And we're rooting for you. Hopefully, you get the 30K, 50K goal that you have for this year. All the very best for that. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thanks for the interview, man. Really enjoyed that. Good seeing you guys.
Thank you, man. I'll just share it with you once it's out. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Dylan.
Sounds good.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
good one. Bye.
See you guys.